everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I have another book review for you, and that is for Batman, The Killing Joke, written by Christa, Faust, and Gary Phillips. This is, as you might imagine, a novel adaptation of the graphic novel, The Killing Joke. This is not a review of the comic, graphic novel, whatever you want to call it. This is a review of this novel adaptation. I have never read the graphic novel before. I have been interested in it before, but I've always been kind of a casual Batman fan. I'm not like super into it. Like, I'm not much of a comics reader generally, although I would like to get into more comics at some point, including some Batman comics potentially. But I've always been like a fan of him in other mediums. I've always really enjoyed the Christopher Nolan Batman trilogy. I love the Batman Arkham video games, which do actually borrow elements of the Killing Joke story. So I've always been kind of familiar with aspects of it. So I've always been kind of a casual Batman fan, and this story in particular has always kind of intrigued me because I know how beloved it is within the Batman fandom. And so I've been always very curious about reading it someday. And one day I was in the bookstore and I saw this as well as another Batman novel sitting on the shelves. I had no idea this existed, and so I picked it up because I was like, hey, I can read like I'm not as much of a comics reader, although I do enjoy comics here and there and I'd like to get into them, but I am much more of a novel reader. I enjoy reading like novels and things like that. So a novel adaptation of that story is something that would be right up my alley. So very cool that this exists, first of all. But I was very excited to read it, and I have to say I really enjoyed my time with this book. It was fun, it was exciting, action-packed in many places. Just a really good book, and a very fun read, very quick read as well. I read it in, like 2.5 days. It's only 300 pages, it's not long, but still, like a very fast read. There are many things I enjoyed in this book. Before I talk about anything else, I do think I need to mention like the structure of this book, which is a little unusual, especially if you're coming from this, I think, off the graphic novel, which, like I said, I haven't read, but I did look up just a brief synopsis of it just so I could know what was original to the book and what wasn't and things like that. And this book does add a lot to the graphic novel, but it does it in a kind of a weird way. So this book really is kind of two stories in one. The first 20 pages of this book are from the graphic novel, and the last 100 or so pages of the book are also from the graphic novel. And those combined, as well as a little bit from the middle of the book, make up what is being directly adapted. However, the middle 180-ish pages, maybe a little less than that with the bit in the middle that's also adapted. So I'd guess probably about half of this book is fully original material, and all of that has to do with Batman and Batgirl and Jim Gordon and all these people kind of investigating these drug activities related to this new drug called Giggle Sniff, which is originating from something to do with the Joker and things like that. And so they're kind of going on this like criminal underworld investigation thing. So you've got that, which I think takes place about a week or two before the main event of The Killing Joke. And then the remainder of the book, the first 20 pages or so, which kind of serves as like an introduction, and then the final 100 pages of the book are the graphic novel adaptation, which focuses primarily around Joker escaping from Arkham Asylum and devising and carrying out this plan in order to basically do an attack against Jim Gordon and Barbara Gordon, who is Batgirl. And so it's kind of a weird structure in that way because it does adapt the graphic novel, but it also has this other section that feels a little bit unrelated, I think, in some ways, which is to an extent a weakness of this book to me. But I do think that I still enjoyed both sections of this book. That middle section of the book was still interesting, had some good stuff going on in it, I think. It was really fun to read, all that kind of thing. So that is something that I would be aware of going into this book if you're looking to get into it, as it does have that kind of weird dual narrative kind of thing going on. But I did really enjoy this book all the way through still, and I think one big reason for that, in addition to finding both aspects of the story very interesting, I would say especially the part directly adapting The Killing Joke was probably my favorite part of the book in terms of the two storylines. But I also really liked the character work in this book. The characters are very well done. Everybody has a strong sense of voice and character to them. Even, side characters, secondary characters. Batman sounds different from Jim Gordon, sounds different from Joker, sounds different from Alfred, sounds different from, the random criminals they fight, all this stuff. All the characters feel distinctive and like their own character, which I appreciated, and they're all done very well, and they all feel true to who they are. Like, to me, Batman and Joker, especially in this book, because, out of all the characters, they're probably the ones I'm most, familiar with, they feel very much like Batman and the Joker. And as I was reading this book, I could just hear Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill in my head reading the lines, because they just feel like Batman and the Joker. So they were both written very well, even in the original sections of this book. I also really enjoyed the atmosphere of this book. The book primarily takes place, I would say, in 4 locations. You have Gotham City, generally. You have Arkham Asylum, you have the Batcave, and you have this abandoned amusement park. And all of these places have a very distinct feel to them. Like, Gotham City feels like I think Gotham City should, where it's like this city, but it also has this kind of dark underbelly to it. Arkham Asylum has a strong sense of atmosphere to it. The Batcave feels like, the Batcave, like all that kind of thing. To me, this book just has a strong sense of atmosphere and setting to it that is very well done. So not only are the characters really well defined and feel really like they should, I think, but I would say the same thing for the characters as well. I also really enjoyed just generally like the action in this book and the writing and everything. Like, this book was generally just really fun to read, at least in parts. So towards the end, I would say it was really enjoyable, not so fun. Because it gets pretty dark. But the middle section of the book with like the investigation into the drug stuff and everything feels like, just a fun, action-packed Batman story, which I really appreciated. And then the actual Killing Joke section of the book is much darker, I think, much more thematic, I guess. Like, there are some strong themes presented in this book that I think especially come through towards the end that I really enjoyed. And things like that. So all that stuff I think was really, really well done. Really enjoyed all of that. Just generally I had a really good time with this book. Like, there's really good character work, really good atmosphere, really good action, good dialogue. In parts is just a fun, action-packed book, and in other parts is something that is actually kind of thought-provoking in some ways, where it's like the themes, I think, are really interesting to look into, especially considering the characters that it's working with, especially of the Batman and the Joker, and things like that. And I also really enjoyed, there was some like flashback scenes in this book too, with one of which being one of my favorite parts of the book, being like a potential origin story for the Joker, which I had heard of and I knew about. In fact, if you've played Batman Arkham Origins like I have, you get to play through that origin story, which was very interesting. And I really enjoyed that part of the book as well. That was really cool. As far as anything that I didn't like about the book, is pretty minor stuff for me. I do think that certain sections of the middle of this book didn't quite grab me so much, focusing much more on like side characters and things, focusing away from kind of the main cast of, like I said, Batman, Batgirl, Joker, Jim Gordon, all of them, focusing on like some more of the minor criminals and just other random characters in Gotham. Didn't care for some of that quite so much. I still enjoyed reading it, but I was kind of like, I just kind of want to get back to the main cast, basically. So, it's still good, just didn't quite grab me quite so much. I do think that the dual narrative part of this book feels a little weird. Like, I get why they added more, and to me that is actually a point in favor of this book, because when it comes to a novelization, I want a novelization to add more. If it's just a straight retelling of the basic story, I might as well just go ahead and read the original story, or, you know, watch the original movie, or whatever the case may be. But I do enjoy that it added more, but it just feels like they're not as connected as they should be. So that's another thing that didn't really bother me that much, because I still enjoyed it, but it feels like, you know, 2/3 of this book feels kind of disconnected from the other third of the book to me, basically. And also the ending of this book, I really enjoyed generally. Like the last 100 pages of this book, amazing, fantastic, loved it. But the very end of this book does deviate a little bit from the graphic novel, which I'm not going to spoil, obviously, but I am aware of the ending of the graphic novel, and I feel like that would have been more effective, because this book does remove a sense of ambiguity from that ending. It does show the aftermath of that ending, and to me, if it had stuck closer to the actual ending of the graphic novel, it may have been a little bit more effective. As an ending itself, it's totally fine, but I do think that it may have been more effective if it had been a more direct adaptation in that way, and not added more onto the ending. So that's a little thing. That's something that didn't really bother me that much. I just think it would have been better had it been done differently. But overall, I really liked this book a lot, had a lot of fun with it throughout most of it, and then the rest of it that I didn't have as much fun with was still really good. It's just not very fun to read, because it's some messed up stuff happening in this book. But really enjoyed this overall anyway. Had a really good time with it. Lots of good character stuff, lots of good and interesting plot stuff going on, really good sense of atmosphere. Like, this feels very much like I would expect a Batman book to feel like. So really enjoyed it a lot. Had a great time with it. Highly recommend, if you're like me and you're not much of a comics reader, if you want to get a version of this story in book form, then I would definitely recommend checking this out. And if you are a fan of the graphic novel, I'd also recommend reading this as kind of an alternate take on that story. So as far as a rating out of 10 that I would give The Killing Joke, I'd give it like a 9.5 out of 10. I really enjoyed it. I had a really good time with it. It was just very entertaining. Flew right through it and loved just about every second of it. I had a really good time with this book. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this review. Let me know in the comments if you have read The Killing Joke and what you thought of it. If you happen to have read the novel and the graphic novel, let me know which one you prefer. And if you think this was an effective adaptation. Like I said, I've never read the graphic novel, so I'm curious to see what opinions are for people who have read both. But for me, as someone who hasn't read the graphic novel but has been aware of it for many years, I did really enjoy this adaptation. So that is pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.